Alaska Airlines just lost a third of its market value in a single month. Not from a crash, not from a scandal, from jet fuel that doubled in price while America was busy bombing Iran. And here is the part that should terrify every single one of you, because this is only the first domino. Plus, the Marines are quietly preparing to seize an island most Americans have never heard of, and what one general just said about the new chief of staff at the Pentagon will make your jaw drop. Welcome back, friends. I am Andrew Meet Rich. And if you find this kind of analysis useful, please hit that like button and subscribe. We do the hard work of digging through the noise, fact-checking, and connecting dots that the mainstream feeds quietly leave out. If you want to support that work, the Super Thanks button or a sponsorship genuinely keeps us independent. And stick around to the very end, because the most important story of the day, the one about who is really winning this war, is waiting for you there. Now let me start with the airlines, because this is the story that nobody on cable news is telling you straight. Since the war started in late February, jet fuel prices have surged by roughly 100%, doubled. In a single month, Alaska Airlines is down nearly 30%, Southwest down a quarter. JetBlue, American, all bleeding double digits. United just announced it is cutting capacity by 5%, and the rest will follow. You know what is interesting? Only Delta is holding up, and that is purely because they generate enough cash to absorb the shock. Bank of America already reported airline ticket spending plunged in the final 2 weeks of last month. Travelers are postponing trips. They are not booking. So what does the industry do? It cuts flights, it cuts staff, it raises ticket prices and bag fees, and it passes the entire cost shock onto you. The American family pays for the war on every boarding pass. And here is the kicker. The airline collapse is just the visible edge of something much bigger. Diesel is also doubling, and diesel runs the airports, the trucks, the supply chains, the entire logistics backbone of this country. The world runs on diesel, and that fuel is now a casualty of this war that nobody is even talking about. Now, speaking of casualties, let us go to the Persian Gulf, because the Pentagon is moving 6 amphibious ships and roughly 8,000 personnel to the region right now, among them between 4,000 and 5,000 Marines. Wall Street Journal sources say Washington is openly considering a marine landing or a naval blockade of a small island called Karg, sitting just off the Iranian coast. Why does that matter to anyone outside a war room? Because more than 90% of all Iranian oil exports flow through Karg. Trump advisors say a full seizure could deliver, and I'm quoting them here, an economic knockout to Iran. Think about that. The plan is no longer just bombing. The plan is to physically seize a piece of foreign territory and choke off the energy lifeline of an entire nation. And while that may sound impressive on paper, just imagine the precedent. America puts boots on a Persian Gulf island, and every authoritarian regime on the planet immediately rewrites its own playbook for invading its neighbors. But wait, that is not all. While the Marines were boarding their ships, gasoline at the average American pump crossed $4 a gallon. American crude spiked above $117 a barrel. And yes, the temporary ceasefire has pulled prices back down a little, but listen carefully. The deal is for 2 weeks. Just 14 days, and there are 800 tankers backed up inside and outside the Persian Gulf, some of them waiting 4 full weeks already. Can the world actually clear that backlog before the truce expires? Nobody on Wall Street believes it. Now, here is where it gets really important for your wallet. The Federal Reserve was supposed to cut interest rates this year. That is what every investor was banking on. That dream is officially dead. Chairman Powell and the regional Fed presidents have all said the same thing this week. Inflation has been running above the 2% target for 5 years straight. They cannot ignore an oil shock layered on top of that. So rate cuts off the table. Mortgages stay expensive, credit cards stay punishing, and on top of that, there is a criminal investigation into Powell himself, and Senator Tillis has vowed to block confirmation of the next nominee until that investigation is resolved. In a word, the central bank is paralyzed in the middle of an oil shock, with no captain on the bridge. A Deutsche Bank report this morning quietly raised the alarm on stagflation. And honestly, when economists start whispering that word, you should pay attention, because the last time we had stagflation, it took the country an entire decade to climb out. And meanwhile, in Hungary, of all places, the Vice President of the United States just landed in Budapest 5 days before parliamentary elections. His mission? Save Viktor Orban from losing. Orban is currently trailing the opposition by nearly 10 points. The visit was openly framed as election interference. The Vice President told reporters Brussels bureaucrats were trying to destroy Hungary's energy independence, and he hinted, not very subtly, that Europe should start buying Russian gas again. You know what that means in plain English? Money flowing back to the Kremlin. Money that funds the war in Ukraine. The same Ukraine America says it supports. And honestly, this is the part that should make every taxpayer furious. Because while the airline industry is dying and gasoline is breaking the family budget, your government is flying your vice president across the Atlantic to prop up a foreign leader who is openly aligned with Moscow. Tell me again who is running American foreign policy and on whose behalf. Now here is the kicker, and this one is genuinely shocking. Iranian air defenses, the same air defenses the Pentagon publicly bragged were completely destroyed, just shot down an American F-15 fighter over southwestern Iran. The defense secretary had told the country we had achieved total air dominance. Trump claimed Iran had no air defenses left at all. It was a lie. And not only was the F-15 successfully intercepted, but the Washington Post is now reporting that the defense secretary has been feeding the president excessively optimistic assessments for weeks. The CIA had to launch an emergency rescue operation to find the downed pilot, comparing the mission, and I am quoting the agency director here, to finding a liver in a desert. Now listen. When the people running a war start lying to the commander-in-chief about the war they are running, you are looking at the textbook recipe for strategic disaster. We have seen this exact pattern before. Vietnam, Iraq, the body bags follow the lies, always. And finally, the story I promised you, the one nobody on American television is touching. While Washington was busy bombing, Beijing quietly took over Persian Gulf diplomacy. The 5-point Beijing Declaration, brokered through Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey, was formally announced this week. For the first time, China is at the center of the most important regional negotiation on the planet, and Washington is not even at the table. But here is the part nobody is talking about. There is exactly one country in the world that benefits from a long Middle East war: Russia. With Europe, China, and Japan desperate for energy and Hormuz blocked, Russia gets to ramp up oil and gas exports at premium prices, financing its own war effort indefinitely. The Kremlin calls global misery a bonanza, and right now, the global misery is paying out beautifully. Ukrainian drones have been hitting Russian refineries in Leningrad for exactly this reason, trying desperately to neutralize the windfall before Moscow can fully cash in. So the question I leave you with is this: who is really winning the war America is fighting? Hit that like button before you go, because every single like genuinely matters. YouTube's algorithm rewards engagement, and the more comments and likes a video gets, the more new people see it. That is how independent voices like this one survive on a platform that constantly tries to bury them. If you appreciate the research, the fact-checking, and the long hours spent piecing together what the mainstream feeds simply will not show you, please consider supporting the channel through sponsorship or the Super Thanks button. Every contribution helps us stay independent, helps us keep digging, and helps us keep saying the things nobody else will say. Drop a comment with your thoughts on the war, on the economy, on what you think is coming next. I read every single one. Thank you sincerely for being part of this community. It honestly means everything.